Hey everyone, welcome back to Ben's Almanac. I'm Mac, and this is devlog number 7. The show itself, Ben's Almanac, is going to be one where an AI is the primary presenter. I want the AI to generate the deck, the storyline, and then execute on it by actually presenting it to us, the audience, as a Zoom style meeting. And I will be like the director who catches any mistakes or oddities there. I really want to push to see how far AI can go. And this week, we are working on building the part of the pipeline that allows us to generate those presentations. In particular, what we've already determined is we're going to be using Python and PowerPoint as our primary tool suite in order to actually generate these decks. This week, I'm changing it up a bit. Normally, I make a quick deck just to say what I was doing this week and then some insight I took away. But while we're following a similar structure, this time we're in PowerPoint itself while deck's being created instead of a finished presentation. And the reason I want to do it this way is if there's anybody out there who builds a lot of decks or PowerPoints, the term deck comes from consultant, actually, like marketing ad agencies where they would mock up things on these big cardboard visuals. And a lot of our terminology when working with PowerPoint actually comes from that. That was like the OG way to present something back in the day. And anyone who does this frequently will be familiar with having a lot of small edits to make when they're building a new presentation. Even really minor things like creating boxes around the text boxes, making little outlines, making sure the colors are coordinated, the formatting's aligned. Even if you have a company standard template, there's always small tweaks that an analyst makes for their own aesthetic. And I realized when working on this template that actually it was pretty easy to make those changes. And had I gone to my past self and be able to explain this, these are just the 3 very simple things I would have wanted to know. Because often it's less about mastering a skill rather than knowing that there is a tool out there that can solve it for you. And that's what I want this quick video today to be about. Now, in order to do this, first you got to open up your PowerPoint or your Google Slides. I'm presuming that templates there works very similarly, but check for yourself if that is your preferred setup. But then you go to View up at the top and Master and Slide Master. And this is where the magic happens, as it were. So you can see here on the left, right over here, there is like this stack of different templates, but there's one that seems to be popping out more than the others. This is called the master template or the parent slide. And what you need to know about this is that any changes you make here are going to end up permanently altering all of the future things you do anywhere down here. And what I mean by that is that there is this concept in PowerPoint of a watermark. And it comes from having a piece of paper, book, or poster where you have like some little cup that has condensation and then it permanently marks that medium of drawing or paper. It's watermarked into it. I actually don't know if that's where it comes from, but it's how I remember it in my head. And what that means is that when you see something on a PowerPoint slide that isn't just blank and you can't change it, that means it's watermarked into it. It's part of the foundational formatting of the slide. And this is often where that happens. So if you look here, you can see the Primal Insights logo. That's just going to be part of each and every slide. And wherever I put this, it will appear in every downstream slide here. And furthermore, if I try to click it, it won't move. And this pattern of a high-level template creating something that can not be moved when a lower level actual slide gets generated, even if it's another template itself, will repeat across this entire view. So if I make something here, it won't affect the downstream stuff because they're all aligned. They're all equal in power on what they create. But if I later go and create a slide just from this particular template, any changes that I make here will appear there as well. With the exception of one thing, and this is really the bread and butter of just doing templates in PowerPoint generally, and that's here, this insert placeholder. Now you can see there's a drop-down text, content, cameo, chart, picture, whatever. But this concept of a placeholder is really important in templates. So normally when you are working in a PowerPoint, you might come over here, right? We're now back in the standard view. This is no longer the template creation view. If I just click something like a text box, text here, you can see it just appears there, right? You can move it around, you can do whatever you want. And this is what you're used to. But if we go back over to the slide master, and we did that same thing on one of these, right? And we took this and we took a text header, see, text here, right? And we compare this to the slide master, the insert placeholder here. Yeah, it's pretty annoying that it comes created like this, but I haven't figured out a better solution. Text alternative placeholder. All right, and we have these side by side, these two examples. And close this master, and we see it auto-populates because this slide, we're already back in the regular slide view, was pulling from that specific layout. So we see the text here, right? This one, the one that was from the text box on the template, is now watermarked in there. That's permanent now. You can paste over it with something, but that's really inelegant and then creates problems down the line. But this one, that was a placeholder, this you can write over, right? Over placeholders. And that's the really important piece of working with these templates, is that you want to consistently be making sure that unless it's going to be some permanent thing, that you are using placeholders instead of text boxes. Because anything that is not a placeholder becomes permanent. It gets pressed in place on anything that comes later on. So that's a very important consideration, is almost everything you want to be using from a placeholder, unless it's specifically for like the slide's branding or the formatting itself. Now, the final thing I wanted to cover today, just to keep this very quick, is specific to automating from a PowerPoint. When you are doing that, when you're scripting, no matter what language you're using, if you're pulling in from a PowerPoint these templates, it can get really confusing very quickly. And the reason is you have a ton of these options. And this is like still considered pretty small, and there's a dozen of them. I've seen templates that have several dozens to the low hundreds in terms of things you can be pulling from. They can get very large. Each of these, though, can be renamed. So if you come to this left-hand side, these are the things you're pulling from, these layouts. But if you choose one, you can come over here, right-click it, click rename, and you can give it any name that makes more sense to you. Because especially as you're generating these, it'll just auto-populate names, and that will get confusing very quickly. But when you're scripting, you're going to list out and see everything that you can select from, and you want that to be descriptive enough that you don't have to continuously open and recheck those naming files. So this is an easy place to do it, and it's very simple. You just go to the left-hand side, right-click it, rename. The final thing, in the same vein, this is a very similar concept, but the layout is different, so it gets a little bit confusing. If you're looking at these, and you select one of them, you'll see up here a new option gets created. So when we're not selected on anything, you don't even see it, at least for the base PowerPoint on Mac. But when you select it, you'll see a shape format. And if you go there and you click selection pane, you'll see this list here on the right. And this list, for automation specifically purposes is very, very important, because this is where you can rename those placeholders we were talking about. So if you come over here, all 4 of these, all 5, 6, all of these are placeholders. And if I just start dropping in new text boxes or new placeholders, it'll just populate with some random name. Or if I copy and paste, like is very common in PowerPoint, it will just take the same duplication of that name. So you see that here, header left over here for this one, highlighted here, and if you click this, header left as well. But what you can do is you can come here, double click, and change this. Bottom left, or whatever it is. And why that's really useful is, just like with these left-hand side layouts that you rename, when you are over in Python or JavaScript or whatever, if you name these objects consistently, you do not need to look at a chart to figure out what each identifier is lining up with. You can just pick them as you go and then create your constraints and lexicon over there. Or at least that's how I'm handling it. And that's going to become very important to keep straight as you add more and more. So you can see over here on probably my most object heavy slide so far for the layouts, each of these gets its own little name in some consistent format. So I know that it is the second I look at it without having to relook at this slide, open up the selection pane all over again. So those were the 3 big things I took away. They're not like groundbreaking changes, but what I found was I realized I didn't even know how much you could change just from templates, and adjusting those little details every time you do a deck is frustrating and time consuming. And it would have been nice to just set it once and then keep reusing my favorite slide templates exactly the way I like it. Because what I find is I just go and copy and paste like an old slide that I like and use that as a baseline, which is fine practice. But this is that idea, but standardized and more easily reused. So if anybody out there makes a lot of presentations and hasn't been exposed to adjusting in templates before, I hope this is helpful. And for people following the devlog series, we will have another update next week with, this time, creating the lexicon over in Python and doing some simple testing for automation. In order to do that, there's going to be some YAML involved. I'll go over that next week, preferably with these new templated slides instead of the old Google slides I was working on. So we'll see how those look then. But thank you everyone so much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Bye everyone.